At Evernorth Health Services, we believe costs shouldn't get in the way of life-changing care, and we're doing everything in our power to make it possible. Behavioral health solutions that also keep your projections at their best? It's possible. Pharmacy benefits that benefit your bottom line? It's possible. Complex specialty care that cares about your ROI? It's possible. Because we're already doing it. All while saving businesses billions. That's Wonder made possible. Learn more at evernorth.com/wonder.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hi, it's Ken Harbaugh. If you're looking for a specific episode of Warriors in Their Own Words, or if you'd just like to browse our collection of veteran interviews, visit evergreenpodcasts.com. We've categorized every episode in our library by conflict, battle, branch, and much more. With one click, you can find every fighter pilot, every prisoner of war, every Medal of Honor recipient, and every D-Day survivor in our catalog, just to name a few. Visit evergreenpodcasts.com and click over to the Warriors in Their Own Words show page to get started. I'm Ken Harbaugh, host of Warriors in Their Own Words. In partnership with the Honor Project, we've brought this podcast back at a time when our nation needs these stories more than ever. Warriors in Their Own Words is our attempt to present an unvarnished, unsanitized truth of what we have asked of those who defend this nation. Thank you for listening, and by doing so, honoring those who have served. Today, we'll hear from Lieutenant Colonel Henry Mayo, Hank Bourgeois. Bourgeois served in World War II as a Marine Corps fighter pilot and was a member of VMFS 214, also known as the Black Sheep Squadron. The Black Sheep became famous for their numerous successes over the Solomon Islands and their leader, Lieutenant Colonel Pappy Boyington.
My name is Henry Mayo Bourgeois, born in New Orleans in 1921. I attended St. Aloysius High School in New Orleans and then went to Louisiana State University to become an aeronautical engineer. And my parents and grandparents all came from French-speaking parish, St. James Parish in Louisiana. I've been flying since I was 13. My father's best friend was a Reserve Air Force captain, not Army Air Corps. And he looked after me and taught me to fly. And then when I went to LSU, I worked at the Baton Rouge Air Base airfield, washing and pushing airplanes and for flight time. In my junior year at LSU, a recruiting team came by in Navy in their white uniforms and gold wings and all that. But this was, let's see, I guess it was the spring of 1941. And they convinced me that this was the way to go. So I signed up to go to flight training. And they took me in on my birthday, September 1st, 1941. I went down to Naval Air Station, Corpus Christi, and began flight training there. And the interesting thing about that was the war hadn't started yet. And at that time, the flight training course to get your wings and become an officer was about 18 to 20 months. When the war started, they cut out all the crap, and we went down. I was out of there in June, in 6 months, and I got my wings and went to the Marine Corps as a second lieutenant. We went out to North Island, California, by San Diego, for fighter training, and finished that in about the 1st of December, 1942, and then they put us on a Lurleen, a transport right to the New Caledonia, and from there up to Espiritu Santos, New Hebrides group. And I joined VMF 122 when I arrived there in late January 1943. And that was my first combat tour. My first combat, you remember Joe Foss was in the 122, and this was his last combat tour. And we were on Guadalcanal with flying F-4F Wildcats. And they didn't have too many airplanes, and the experienced pilots got all the combat flights. But the only thing I did was we had a photographic Wildcat, an F-4F7, I believe. And I flew 2 or 3 missions over Munda to take photographs. And a couple of times the airplane was riddled. And the only other mission I can remember, and that was a strafing mission when the Navy damaged, I think it was a destroyer in the Straits there, and we went up to strafe it. The second combat tour was interesting because we got not brand new, but we got 18 Corsairs, and that was a great airplane. I'll never forget the first time sitting in the cockpit with the handbook, reading it, and then it says, push this switch, push that switch, push that button, and the mechanics there, he didn't see this airplane before either, and then that big engine started to run. God, it was a thrill. Had about maybe 6 or 7 hours in that airplane, and the Japs were, from their submarines, were launching seaplanes at night to fly reconnaissance flight over the the harbor there in Espiritu Santos. So they asked for a volunteer to go up and try and shoot this thing down. So being young and enthused, and I said, I'll go. And so I took off one night at dark, and they were trying to vector me around with radar. And they'd get me under this thing. And it was a dark night. You couldn't see it, but I could see that against the stars, but I couldn't slow down. It flew so slow, it kept passing under it, and that vectored me around and came back. I never did get a chance to shoot at it. But that was a thrill in my first mission in a Corsair. Then the squadron was transferred to Guadalcanal, and I was flying wing on a captain, can't remember his name, it'll come to mind. We were escorting SBD dive bombers up to Bougainville. If I remember, there were about 18 dive bombers, and I think we had 16 Corsairs in the air flying cover for the dive bombers. We got up there, was a big thunderstorm. They were really after the shipping, and there was a big thunderstorm over the harbor. So the alternate was to hit the airfield. And as dive bombers started to push over, about 20 or 30 Japs jumped us. And it started a dogfight dogfights spread all over the sky, and maybe 10 miles by 10 miles or something like that. And you never see exactly what's going to happen. And Japs got on my tail. Captain Lundin was my leader. And he went after a Jap, and a Jap went after me. And then we got separated. And then I went into this cloud to get away from the Jap on my tail, and came back out, and there was a Zero right in front of me. I mean, maybe 100 yards at the most, just sitting there. I blasted him, and he blew up, and then I went back into the cloud because they were after me again. And this went on, I don't know how long, but it was in and out of this cloud, and after, I shot 2 Zeros down that day. I came out, and there was nobody around. There wasn't an airplane in the sky. And so I returned to base. And that was my first combat mission, where air to air, actually, somebody was shooting at me and I'm shooting at them. So the first Corsairs we got were the F-4U-1s. And that's before they screwed them up with extra armor and all that. But they were powerful, they were lightweight. They had problems with oil leaks and hydraulic leaks. But I have about 350 hours in Corsairs. And I could get in a Corsair right now today and fly it. And the early models were unbelievably maneuverable You could bank and turn and pull hard things, climb fast, they'd go fast. And, who I really praise is the mechanics on the ground. We'd come back from missions, and they work all night long getting these airplanes ready to go in the morning. They might exchange wings or tails or put a new engine, a carburetor, magneto, or what it was. But I never had a bad airplane. It's kind of interesting. There's a picture in that book over there, a side number, Corsair 13 on Monday. I seem to have flown that Corsair side number 13 most of the times. And you can see it has a bunch of holes of it. And I was a runabacker that got shot up in that airplane. But that airplane always seemed to be a little faster, a little smoother, a little better trimmed than all the rest of the airplanes. And it's hard to explain. It's like racing cars I get. Some are great and some are not so great. We usually had about 18 airplanes assigned at one time. And you had 24 pilots, or 26, whatever it was. And you rarely had more than 16 airplanes in commission. Some of them on the ground, waiting parts or whatever it was. And Frank Walton would assign you airplanes, and assign your airplane number 22, 13, or 7, or whatever it happens to be, and that's the airplane you flew that day. But nobody had an airplane assigned to him specifically. I've read some articles where people like Walsh, I believe, claims that he had his Corsair all the time. Whether he did or not, it's hard to believe. But we didn't. We flew whatever was available. The Zero, we were briefed early that it was a fast maneuverable airplane, and that you just didn't get involved in a dogfight where you're trying to outturn him because there's no way you could do it. You'd always try and keep speed and dive away if he was on your tail, but it had one vulnerability. It had no self-sealing gas tanks or armor plate. And if you could get a burst of fire into that airplane, it was going to go down. And I guess my attitude and the people in my flight was, kill the bastards. And we talked about, do you shoot them in a parachute? I couldn't do that. But, we talked about, as long as you hit the airplane, knocked them down, got the pilot out, everybody was happy. But I know there were some people that, shot at them and in a parachute, in the water, things like that. And there was some tragedies, like Bill Case in one mission, VMF 122, we were escorting B-24s. And some unexpected Corsairs came in to join the escort, and he didn't know there were Corsairs, and he just pulled over and fired at one. Fortunately, it didn't do any real damage other than some holes in the airplane. But then we lost Alexander in VMF 214 when he mistakenly shot at one of our PT boats, and they shot back and knocked him down. And then there was another mission where my division was assigned to strafe some Japanese island bases that were really deserted, but lousy weather coming back, and the last man in the division saw what looked like a barge going through the water, and he just pulled off and started strafing it, but it was ours. And you make mistakes. John Bolt, I got to tell you this, I don't know if he told you, but he got interested in armament, how you load the rounds in a machine gun, and he came up with, I can't remember, like an incendiary, armor-piercing, tracer, and something or other. It was a brand new concept. And he spent a lot of time with the ordnance people, making sure the guns were all zeroed in at about 200 yards or whatever it was. And I tell you, when you hit a Japanese Zero or any airplane with 6 50 caliber machine guns. That is a lot of firepower because, man, they fire so fast. The airplane would explode. You'd knock a wing off or tail off or kill a pilot. So I flew 2 combat tours with VMF 122, and then that squadron was rotated home. You had to have, in those days, 3 combat tours, and then you were eligible to go home. And I was in a pool of pilots. And at that time, Boyington was designated to be the commanding officer, newly designated 214. And he went through the pool and he picked out pilots who had combat experience. And since I'd had 2 combat tours and had shot down some Japs, I was one of the people that he picked. And that's how I became a member of VMF 214, the Black Sheep.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
We often hear about the individuals who took the oath of office to become the chief executive. But what about the other people who play a role in each administration, or the events that may not be as well known, but that contribute to the reshaping of the office of the American presidency? On the Presidencies of the United States, we explore each administration beyond just the person holding the highest elected office in order to better understand the history that brought us to the modern-day presidency. I hope you'll join me on this journey through the annals of presidential history. Presidencies can be found anywhere fine podcasts can be found, and is a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network.
There was always parties, and we were invited over there one night for a party, and Boyington was there. I didn't know who he was at the time. He was just introduced as Greg, and that was the first time I met him. And then when we were transferred to go overseas, it turned out that he was the senior officer in the pilot replacement pool aboard the ship, and that's when I first got to know him, because he liked to play bridge and I liked to play bridge. And so we, it was 17 or 18 days getting over to New Caledonia. So we played a lot of bridge on the way. He had brought along a case of Scotch whiskey for some general friend out there, but I think he drank it all up on the way. So, and that's when I liked him, but when we got on the islands out there, he seemed to do a lot of drinking, and he really was not an administrator on the ground. And whatever squadron it was in, it was really run by either executive officer or some administrative officer. In the Black Sheep Squadron, it was Frank Walton, who was intelligence officer, and he really ran the ground part of the squadron. And Boyington just seemed to, be kind of placid and drunk most of the time. Sometimes when he took off in the morning, he just staggered out to an airplane. But in the air, God, I tell you, it was something. I can remember flying dawn patrols and with him, and you would go up there, and it was really nothing to do but just circle around for 2 hours and hoping if the Japanese came down to bomb Munder, you might get something, and it was nothing to do. So he'd get bored with making circles, and we'd start doing loops and rolls and wing overs and anything else just to, God, by the time he ended up, he was sweating like mad trying to keep up with him. But he was a brilliant pilot, very aggressive in anything he did, on the ground, hand-to-hand fight or anything like that. On the Lurling going over, there was a Marine Raider battalion being transferred out to the Pacific. And every day up on the recreation deck, they would practice hand-to-hand fighting and boxing and everything, and he was right in the middle of it all the time. Whether his opponent was a corporal or sergeant or another major, it didn't make any difference. He'd do his best to beat him to the ground. So he just seemed to have a will to win in everything, on the ground, fighting, arguing, or in the air with an airplane. And he certainly, in the airplane field, was extremely capable pilot. He was really something. Kind of interesting, that combat tour, even though we supposedly had a division, when we got up there, you never had enough airplanes. And you'd get a mission in the morning, or a mission. We usually flew 2 missions a day. And he'd go, and Frank Walton would say, hey, look, you're going to fly this, you're going to fly that. And Boyington, I had a reputation for having extremely good eyesight, which I did in those days. And Boyington was anxious to find Japs to shoot down, because sometimes we would go up on fighter missions and sweeps, and there wouldn't be a Japanese in the air. So one day he said, Bourgeois, you are leading the mission today. And he was flying on my wing. In fact, I have a photo in that thing there I took from the cockpit. And we went up, and that's the way he was. He was aggressive, and he wanted to get into some sort of action. And that day we went up there, and we were right over Bougainville area. And I'm looking up, and there are 2 Japs way up high, and 2 Japs way down low. And I told the leader of the other division, I said, you take the 2 up there, and I'll take the 2 down there. And we rolled over. We never could catch these 2 guys. They went into a cloud and disappeared. And when we got back, Boyington chewed my fanny out. He says, why didn't you just stay there and let them come at us so we could get them? But that's the way he was. He was really aggressive. When you get in combat with people, you're depending upon each other, and they're your friends. I don't think there was anybody that did anything, like robbed a bank or chased girls, because there's no girls out there, even though that episode said there were. But you become it's hard to explain. I guess it's like a football team that works together, and they develop a comradeship where they want to win, they want to do well. And in VMF 122 and 214, it was the same way, but it seemed to be more so in 214. And I attribute that to, we had about 3 or 4 singers that every night, after the flying was over, the doctor would give us a couple of brandies, and you'd sit around and sing. And some of these guys were pretty good. And, you sit around close and working together. It's kind of impressive. When the squadron was organized, and we all knew we were going to be assigned to VMF 214, we're back in Espiritu Island, Turtle Bay, which was the Marine Corps training base, stepping stone to Guadalcanal. We got together and talked, and I think Bill Case started this, and it said, we ought to have a squadron name, and Frank Walton encouraged that, and the guy says, why don't we call ourselves Boyington's Bastards? And Walton says, no, he says, the papers will not put that in their papers back home. You got to think about something else. So they argued about it for a while, and they decided it was Boyington's Black Sheep, and which, the bastard stripe with this type thing. And they had finally asked an artist, he was a Marine correspondent, I believe, to draw up a shield, which is on those caps with the bastard stripe and, the rest of the thing. And so that's how, it was accepted, and it's been that way ever since. You see, I was only there in the first combat tour, okay, and that was from September about 6th to October of whenever we finished first combat tour. And I don't remember any correspondence or any, big deal. At that time, Frank Walton, and I didn't know this, was sending all kinds of press releases back to the United States, everybody's hometown. In fact, he sent them to the Times-Picayune in New Orleans. And when I came home, I was a hero, and I didn't even know what was going on. And so he did that to everybody, and I think that stirred up interest in Boyington because he began, his first mission, he shot down 5 Zeros, and then got a few more, and began to build, his lead, his quantity, as it is, and Walton, would always enter that in every press release. So, and I think that stirred the interest of correspondents. And when the squadron went back for its second combat tour, then that's when they hounded him up there. And at that time, they were flying out of Bougainville. First combat tour, we were flying out of Mundet. And I wasn't involved in the second combat tour, so I really don't know what went on other than what I read in the books and the records. I really liked Frank Walton from the beginning when I first met him. He was smart. He was intelligent. He really had his hand on the capabilities of the pilots in the Black Sheep. And I think sometimes when he assigned people to a mission, he would sort of put people together for, a fighter suite. And I remember one time he insisted I fly wing on Bailey. And he says, you and Bailey can work together. You both have the same capabilities and things like that. I liked the guy. I really did. And I didn't realize that he was also doing all this publicity work until, I got back home. But met him maybe only once or twice after the war, and that's about it. He came out when he wrote his book and visited everybody and, interviewed us and all that stuff, and that was the last time I saw him. All of a sudden, tracers came by my airplane. I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and there's a Zero back there. So, I wasn't going too fast, but I throttled and everything, full throttle and everything, and this Zero was closing up on me, and he was shooting. We didn't hit the airplane, and so one of the things you do in a Corsair to get away from a Zero is you dive because you can outspeed him. So I dove down on the deck, and this guy stayed right with me. And, I got make this airplane go fast. You close all the flaps, the cooling flaps and the oil flaps and everything else. And he's still sneaking up on me. And every once in a while, he'd lob in some cannon shells or whatever it was. And I realized I wasn't headed back towards my base. I was going at an angle away for it, and I'm getting kind of low on gas. And I decided, I'm going to have to fight this guy. So I'm ready to turn around and do whatever I can, and all of a sudden, the Zero pulls off and flies away. In 1973, after I retired from the Marine Corps, I was working for the Singer Company in one of the aerospace divisions, and they sent me to Japan to help one of the Mitsubishi divisions that was producing our gyros and things to plan for the future. Their vice president of marketing was a retired Japanese Air Force General Suo, and we got to talking about the war, and he and I became friendly because he likes to hunt and I like to hunt. And in fact, he got me a custom-made shotgun while I was there, which was impossible for somebody to do. And so, we talked about the war, and he'd been invited back to the United States, to New Jersey, to view our factory and how we did things. And I said, bring your logbook, and I'll check my logbook. And we went back, I looked at a logbook, and that was a guy that day that was trying to shoot me down. And it was interesting. We became lifelong friends. Unfortunately, he's passed away now. So We invited General Suo to visit our factory in New Jersey and to see the products and how they were built. And he was there for a couple of weeks. And I took him duck and goose hunting in Maryland on the Eastern Shore. And it was one of those days when the weather was right and the birds were flying and close by. And he got his limit and I got my limit. And that night we went to dinner. And I'd been picking up the tabs all the time, so he picked up the tab, and we had a few snorts, and then it was over. He turned to me, and he says, "Hank, son," he says, "I'm sure glad I didn't shoot you down." Well, I put 21 years in and retired, and the only reason I took early retirement was my eyes went bad, I got grounded, and I lost my flight pay, and I had 3 boys coming up at the time, and I couldn't figure out how to, finance it, so I went to work in industry. There was a reunion in the first one in Hawaii. I couldn't make it at the time for some reason or other. And then I don't remember how it started, but I started getting them together. We went as a group up for an Alaskan tour. We went to New Orleans and Mississippi River Delta, Queen for a short trip. And I've been trying to get them together about every 4 years, and we're getting fewer and fewer. In fact, Groover just passed away, and I understand that Loesch and Marker aren't doing too well. Well, there are 20 of us alive today, some of them not too well. And out of the 54 in the first into the 2 combat tours, we're getting down to a few. In fact, I wondered who was going to fly the last mission. And I hope it's me.
That was Lieutenant Colonel Henry Mayo, Hank Bourgeois. Thanks for listening to Warriors in Their Own Words. If you have any feedback, please email the team at kharbaugh@evergreenpodcasts.com. We're always looking to improve the show. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review. Warriors in Their Own Words is a production of Evergreen Podcasts in partnership with the Honor Project. Our producer is Declan Roars. Bridget Coyne is our production director, and Sean Rule-Hoffman is our audio engineer. Special thanks to Evergreen executive producers Joan Andrews, Michael DeAloia, and David Moss. I'm Ken Harbaugh, and this is Warriors in Their Own Words.
It's time for today's Lucky Land horoscope with Victoria Cash.
Life's gotten mundane, so shake up the daily routine and be adventurous with a trip to Lucky Land. You know what they say, your chance to win starts with a spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com to play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.